Welcome back to episode 12 of the KTM 200 series, where I have rebuilt this bike to race it at Silver Kings Hard Enduro. We're getting down to crunch time with less than 1 month until Silver Kings, and have all of the components to install electric start on this 2006 KTM 200 XCW. Now, if you're wondering how that's possible, I had to get new engine cases for this bike. You can go check out all of that in previous episodes, but it is go time, so let's get this magic button installed and then go ride some hard enduro. I bought all of these electric start components on RockyMountainATVMC.com, and if you use my link down in the description when you make any purchase on Rocky Mountain, I earn a commission. Also, a big thank you to Randy Rowe, who contributed $400 towards this electric start, which is a big help, and he has an excavation business in Missoula, Montana that I will link in the description. To get started, I needed to access the flywheel and stator in order to update to the new geared flywheel that would accept electric start. I pulled the spark plug and replaced it with my piston stop tool, which makes it easy to lock up the motor so I could remove the flywheel without a flywheel holder. I removed the stator as well to reveal a non-leaking crank seal, thankfully. And then it was time to test fit the new cover along with the fuel tank. I knew from previous measurements that the Petcock would hit this cover, and I had the tall task ahead of relocating the Petcock on this fuel tank. There was indeed room for it just a little bit to the right, but I had no idea if I could actually make it work and was about to start drilling holes in a perfectly good fuel tank. Note, this is an IMS 3.2 gallon tank intended for a 2008 and up 200 XCW, which is a different frame and does not have electric start. I knew this little knob here would get in the way of reserve, so I needed to remove reserve from the Petcock so that by turning the Petcock right instead of left, it allows fuel flow all the way to the bottom of the tank. This proved to be more tricky than I expected, but I was able to drill out the little brass tubing, and with the whole reserve and filter assembly removed, I could verify the new location and fitment of the Petcock. It appeared that I would be able to reuse one old mounting hole for the Petcock that would now be the left mount instead of right, and I would be tasked with sealing one old hole and drilling 2 new ones. I put some grease on the Petcock O-ring and then pushed the Petcock in place to get my marking for the fuel flow / filter hole. And then it was time to start drilling. I used a couple different bits, but ended up on a step bit, going just big enough to fit that fuel filter through. Now, the fuel filter had an open end because that brass tube was previously going through it, which kind of defeats the purpose of the filter, so I cut the end off of the on filter to attempt attaching it to the top of the reserve filter. I used some JB plastic weld and then clamped it in the vise, but this did not hold. I then attempted super gluing a bolt in the top, which also failed, and finally, I ended up with a rubber Cerakote plug glued in there. I was concerned about how it would hold up to fuel long term, so I soaked one in gas, and it appears it'll survive. I will have to keep an eye on this, as if it somehow manages to get sucked into the filter, that would block fuel flow, but it's stuck in there pretty good. So this is where things got complicated and tricky to film because it was a lot of trial and error. The plan was to use a bolt with washers and O-rings on each side through the old filter hole to plug that. Ultimately, I ended up using some fuel-resistant gasket maker on the washer instead of O-rings. I fished that bolt through by dropping it into the tank and then dragging it around with a magnet until it landed where I needed it to. In order to tighten it, I used a series of wobble extensions all the way through the tank to get to the head of that bolt inside the tank. Once I had that sealed up to a point that I was somewhat confident it might work, I installed the modified fuel filter back onto the Petcock and aligned the Petcock for the final mounting hole. Now this one I knew would be tough. The idea was to use one of those rectangular flanged nuts and figure out a way to suck it into the tank and then hope the tank was narrow enough inside that it could not just spin when tightening and would get stuck trying to rotate. In order to actually pull it through, I used a bolt and nut smaller than the actual threads I would be drilling, and once again, I dropped it in and wrestled it through for a solid hour. Then came the moment of truth. I installed the Petcock and was thrilled when it actually tightened into the new mounting location. After 4 hours of tank modification, it was time to find out if any of this actually worked. And would you just take a moment to appreciate the amount of clearance I've got here?
2 a.m. Either gonna go to bed really happy or really sad. It didn't leak immediately, which is really great news, and doesn't appear to be leaking at all. Oh my god. What a freaking operation. I would not recommend this, but I think it might work. Fingers crossed. On to day 2. run on 5 hours of sleep, but the tank did not leak, and I've got what I think is everything needed to get electric start on this puppy. Wiring is for sure my weak point, so I am studying wiring diagrams and trying to figure out how this is all gonna go together.
So I got to work, and where else to start but installing the magic button. Given this bike was not intended for any of this wiring, I had to get a little creative. I fiddled with where to place the connection for that button in order to not pull on the wires when the bars turned, and after a couple iterations settled on this setup here using a bendable cable holder to tuck it in place. Then I had to figure out where to fit the starter relay. I'm not sure where these sit on bikes they're intended for, but this frame does not have a spot for it. I ended up finding a spot to zip tie it by the frame hangers, and the cable to the actual starter motor just barely reaches. I then routed the connection from the starter relay to the battery through the airbox, and I managed to tuck the entire wiring harness in there, which appears to be a bit of a mess, but it works. Finally, I drilled a place for a ground wire into the subframe and cut threads so that I could bolt that ground wire directly to the subframe. So I have no stator and nothing hooked up that can actually turn the motor over, but I think this button should turn the electric starter over. Sure did. So the ambitious goal was to have the electric start completely done today. It is Friday, May 31st. I realized I actually need to upgrade my stator to do this properly. I thought I could get away with using the OEM stator, but with the difference in design here, in order to properly seal this, I need that new stator. Also, I have this TrailTech regulator rectifier, but I realized with all of this OEM stuff installed, I actually have the harness to just use the OEM 2014 regulator rectifier, and I think this entire system will work, charging it all. So while this does set me back a few days on eStart, I ordered that stator and regulator rectifier from Rocky Mountain, where you can use my affiliate link, and I earn a commission on your purchases, by the way, but those will be here Tuesday, so I'm gonna button this thing back up Kickstarter only for the weekend so we can go get some hard enduro training in. Time is ticking, but then the goal is to fully wrap up eStart next week. And I know you guys are staring at this dirty ass air filter. That was only 2 days of really dusty riding one weekend. Don't worry, I'm gonna get it sorted out before I go ride. So that is where we're at. I'm glad I've got the starter actually turning over, all of this wiring tucked in. It is a huge jumble of wiring, but it all actually fits and the tank still slides on. Petcock is moved, so we're making good progress and we're almost there. So I temporarily buttoned the bike back up, kickstart only, and rode an epic day of hard enduro with Kyle, Nate, Tell, and Hallie. If you want to get straight back to eStart install, you can skip to 15:25 in the video, but this is some pretty rad hard enduro.
Got freaking Team Smart Carb here. Hallie Marks in front of me, pro women's hard enduro rider, showing me how this shit is done. Getting absolutely humbled on a 200K. It's good for you. Very off-camber rock. Damn, Tell just beasted up this. What a savage. Woo! I've still never made it up this on my bike. Did you go left or right?
I went there.
It's a big commitment.
And it's so slick.
I ended up pushing it. Yeah! That might be the easiest I've ever seen anyone make that. Yes, sir.
Ah, nice.
Oh, that's a freaking big one. Nice, Kyle. Oh! 2 wheels, Kyle. Oh, 2 wheels, oh, howdy there. Holy, we're boiling. We're overheating, boys. What's up?
How's it going?
How you doing?
Good.
Good. Yeah. Hey, how hot is too hot? My fan's not working. My bike's at 240.
That's hot.
We did a quick trailside tank pull to verify the electrical connections were intact, but in reality, I think I killed my battery since at this point in time, the bike was still operating on a total loss system. Thus, I was left to manage the overheating of my bike for the rest of the day.
You looked good up that, Nate.
Thank you.
Woohoo! Hell yeah. What temp does your fan come on at?
150.
150?
Yeah.
Whoa.
If I don't do that, it overheats like crazy. So.
Yeah, this thing's getting hot without the fan. Big downhill. Big steep downhill. Woo. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. People ask what hard enduro is really like. Oh boy. We're at sub 200. I'll watch you lace this and then decide.
We'll see what happens.
Oh, straight up it. What a beast. What if I can do what Tell did? All signs point to no. Woo, whoa. That went pretty well.
Yeah.
I took your line.
Did you?
Yeah.
It wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
No, it wasn't. You bumped up and over the first rock on the right, and then you could go straight up.
Yeah, I was like, got traction, I didn't die. That's awesome.
Yeah, boy. Thought I had way more talent than I do right there. Classic. We're in it now.
Starting first or starting neutral? Or starting second or neutral?
I'd start in neutral and slap it and drop clutch at the same time. You'll get more speed in neutral.
Nate killed his battery, so he unplugged his fan, but we had to get his bike bumped just once to get that battery to charge a little bit, so we resorted to some pretty creative methods before he ended up just getting it with a classic bump start.
Yeah, buddy! Just 180 pivot, right back up. You guys made that look so easy. Woo! You know when it looks gnarly on 0.5 that it's pretty gnarly. A little hot there. It was a hell of a run though. 250. Blew my overflow clean off. All right, 11 miles, almost 6 hours. How's our morale, Kyle?
It's pretty good.
Nate, how you doing?
I'm alright, I'm a little dead.
Big thumbs up from Tell. And yours over there snacking. Snacking away. Made it to the top of the hardest trail. Unreal. Well, we survived up the hardest trail with overheating bikes and a complete lack of preparation. We're a little over 6 hours in right now. No water, no food. These are the good old adventure days, but now we got a lot of downhill going back. Oh, go the goggles. So as I was saying, very unprepared. We did not expect to be out this long today, but that's good old type 2 fun, makes for a good adventure. Got the 200 up to 270 degrees, which is less than ideal. Fan is not working. Oh. So, gonna have to sort that out. But hopefully smooth sailing back. Bike's still running, so can't complain. Let's get the trucks. Oh my god. Very worried about my bike. It's got a nasty rattle, dude. Yeah. Good ride.
With 15 hours on the meter after that ride, the bike had earned some new scratches as it should, and I managed to mangle my OEM chain guide. On the bright side, the Petcock did not leak a drop, and the rattle I was worried about that I thought could be a failing bearing due to running the bike up to 270 ended up just being a newly developed pipe rattle. But one of my subscribers, Rich, actually sent me an OEM KTM header that I can't wait to try. So big thanks to Rich, and I'll be sending you some Fender Boys apparel right away. This header has clearly seen some riding over the years, but still appears very usable, so I am stoked to compare it to the FMF Gnarly that everyone says robs top-end power. My new stator and regulator arrived from Rocky Mountain, so I could finally continue electric start progress. I stripped the bike back down and installed the new geared flywheel. I missed these bushings in the parts diagram, and my local KTM shop had 3 in stock while I needed 4. This still got me much farther along, and I overnighted 1 more from Rocky Mountain as once again, I am running out of time to test this thing. I installed those 3 bushings and then mounted the new stator inside the ignition cover. I mounted the cover onto the bike and slid the starter into the cover and bolted it up as well. Like I said, the lead from the starter to the relay is barely long enough, but I did manage to get it mounted. I then bolted up the new regulator, and at this point I was so close, but unfortunately at another short standstill without that final bushing. While I waited not so patiently, I cleaned up the new header, and then I installed a TMD chain guide, which is much more reliable than OEM, as the high density plastic will take a beating without bending, whereas those metal guides bend and then cause problems with the chain spinning smoothly. Now, in an effort to make sure this was ready to go for the weekend, every hour mattered, and my friend Chance actually loaned me his starter cover from a 2014 200, complete with bushing, so I could verify this thing actually worked. I installed it on the bike and then once again buttoned everything back up. If I did everything right, I should have a 2006 KTM 200 XCW with functional electric start, a fan, and a charging system.
So here goes nothing. I got my freaking flip-flops on because shouldn't have to kick this thing. I'm so nervous right now. She should fire right up at the button, dude. Woo! Let's go! Let's freaking go! Oh my god! Oh my god, dude! Almost breathe on that starter. Oh my god, that is crazy. Oh, that is so unbelievably satisfying. Let's freaking go, dude. Unreal.
Holy cow. We've got a functional electric start on an 06 KTM 200. That's going to do it for episode 12. Obviously, I've got a lot of testing to do on this thing. Going to get it out on some more hard enduro this weekend. See how it does. Go get yourself some parts on Rocky Mountain. Go get yourself some merch or entries for the pit bike I'm building. It is going to be absolutely badass, and I'm stoked to see who takes that one home. Thank you all, as always, for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.